In this video, we will talk about group by and having clauses and how to use them with the aggregate functions. For example, I have a table like this and I want to get the total gender grouped by the gender, and I want a result like this. So in order to get something like this, we will need to use group by function. Let's see in action how to get a result like this. For this, we will use the test database and the company table. So let's see what we have inside the company table. Select everything from company. Let's run this. As you see, we have this data and we want to count how many male and females we have. As we learned before, we will use count function in order to count number of rows. For this, I will write select count everything from company. So let's run this to see what we have. This will count the total number of rows inside the table company. So now if I want to count the rows per gender, what we do, we add group by. So let's write group by. Group by what? We want to group it by gender. So let's run this again. As you see, we have 47. As you see, we don't have any indication which one is the female and male. For this, we have to add the column name after the select. So the column name is gender and comma, then run the statement again. As you see, we have female and male separated. And also, if you want to change or give a proper name to this column, as we learned before, we will use as, and then let's run the statement again. As you see, we have a proper column name and the female and male are grouped. So it is good practice whenever you do a group by something, by a column, it's better to mention the column name in the select statement as well. In order to get more familiar with the group by function, we will do another practice. This time we will group by department, this column, and then we get the total salary per that department. As you see, we have salary here, and the salary, for example, we want to get the total salary per department, not per the staff. So as you see, we have 3 departments as IT, admin, 3 or 4 or more. So let's see in action how we do this. So let me run the select query again. And now we write the select query. We write select, and because we want to group by department, we will write the department column name. Then we want the sum of salary from company table. So let's run this and see what will happen. As you see, we have one department selected by the syntax and a total salary which is not correct. So for this, we have to add the group by clause. Let's run the query again. As you see, we have a department and the sum for the salary per department. So this way we were able to use the group by with aggregate function. Now we have another example, is grouping by multiple columns with aggregate function. As you see, we have an aggregate function and 2 columns. So we can group by gender first, then group by address, then get the total salary or the sum of the salary per this address and then per gender. So let's see how we do group by more than one column with the aggregate functions. We write select. Because we want 2 columns to be grouped, we have to write them after select. So I will write gender and then write address. Then I will write the aggregate function. In this example, we want the summation of the salary. So we write sum and the salary from company table, and then group by what? Because we have 2 columns, so we have to write both of them. So I will write gender, then address. Now let's run our statement and see what will happen. As you see, we have 3 columns, gender, address, and sum of the salary. You see the salary has been grouped by address, then the gender. This is how to group multiple columns with one aggregate function. Let's go deeper and see how to group multiple columns with multiple aggregation function. In this example, we have grouped this table by gender and address column, and we have 2 aggregate functions. One of them is the sum and the other is count. So let's see how to do multiple groups with multiple aggregate function. Back to our database, what we do, we write select, and then we write the column names that we want to group them. So we write gender, and then we want to the result to be grouped by address column as well, and then we write the aggregate function. For example, we want sum of salary, and then the other aggregate function is count. We want to count how many male and females per address. So we can use asterisk or use the ID, because we are sure the ID is the primary key and never will be null, so we can use it instead of the asterisk. After that, we write from the table name company, and then the other part is writing the group by gender and then the address. And let's close the syntax and run the select statement and see what will happen. As you see, the result is as expected. We have count column and sum column, and then group it by address and gender. Of course, you can give meaningful name or a proper name for each column using the alias name using AS as a total, and then for the sum as well. And let's run the statement again. As you see, we have a proper name for each column. Now, if we want to filter the group, for example, we group it by gender and then we filter by the gender as well. We just return it back the male. Also, we group them by gender, then by address, and then by aggregate function. This is also so easy. I will show you how to do the filtering in two ways using where clause and having clause. So let's go to the database and see how to do it. For saving time, we are using the same syntax we used earlier. So now let's filter this result by gender. For example, what we can do, one of the way is using where clause. The where clause must be used before group by clause. So I will write where gender equals to, and let's run the query. As you see, the result has been filtered by gender, then grouped by gender, and then by address, and we have two aggregate function as well. And this time let's filter the result by male. As you see, only the male gender has been returned back. Now let's use having clause. The having clause is working same as the where. The only difference is we have to write the having clause after group by. So I will write having gender equal to male, and we have to close the syntax. This way we got the same result. You may ask, what is the difference between having and where clause? They are doing the same job, and in the performance perspective they are almost the same. One of the difference is when you are using having, the grouping will happen first, then the filter will happen. But when you are using where clause, the filtering will happen first, then the grouping will happen next.